As the bard rightly said, all the world is a stage. Actors, directors, musicians, and artists have evolved and improvised this past year, and so have we. A new stage, a new platform, but with the same zeal, the same hope, and a myriad of aspirations. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Jay Shah, Vice President and Head Cultural Outreach, Mahindra Group, Teamwork Arts, and the Meta Secretariat, a very warm welcome to Meta 2021. The pandemic in 2020 taught us many lessons. The most important among them was thinking out of the box and reinventing what we knew as normal. In 2021, we continue to curate virtually and bring to you a month and a half of the very best of Meta over 15 years. 5 Meta winning plays will be aired on our social media handles with live virtual conversations on each play, workshops and masterclasses curated on themes around the stage, the backstage and beyond. History stands witness that theatre has been applauded for breaking barriers and bringing the forefront issues that are uncomfortable, unconventional, and convey deep societal truths. Today's conversation will revolve around 2016 Meta-winning play A Friend's Story, which will be followed by the play screening tomorrow at 7 p.m. Indian Standard Time. A very warm welcome once again to this conversation at the Meta 2021. Vijay Tendulkar's A Friend's Story. Drama reflects the truth of our times. Akash Khurana, Gauri Ram Narayan, Saili Phatak and Abhay Mahajan in conversation with Sanjoy K. Roy. Even as Tendulkar's award-winning production, Jati Pucho Sadoki has received threats based on its title and was not staged in Madhya Pradesh, Meta celebrates this formidable playwright who held up the mirror to the modern world. Director Akash Khurana, translator Gauri Ram Narayan, actress Saili Phatak and Abhay Mahajan explores Tendulkar's world and talk about the threat to performance art in today's polarized world. Introducing you to the panelists for the day. In a span of over 4 decades, Dr. Akash Khurana has worked extensively with Satyadev Dubey, Sunil Shanbag and Nasiruddin Shah and is a core member of Arpana, Motley and AK Various Productions. His production of Vijay Tendulkar's A Friend's Story was performed at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London. His most recent production was Under the Gypsy Moon, adapted from Sarat Chandra's Shrikanta and directed for Adyam. He has acted in nearly 60 films, 15 TV serials and web series streaming on Netflix and Amazon Prime. Playwright, theatre director, journalist, vocal accompanist to legendary musician M.S. Subbalakshmi, Dr. Gauri Ram Narayan is a rare amalgam of aesthetics and scholarship. Founder and artistic director of Justice Repertory, her multilingual and multi-genre theatre productions have been staged in the major cities of India, the US, UK and South Asia. She has translated 2 plays by Vijay Tendulkar and short stories by Kalki Krishnamurthy and served as FIPRESCI jury member at the international film festivals in Europe. Saili Phatak is an actor who is passionate not only about stage but also about education and art therapy through theatre. She is known for her performances in A Friend's Story, Mahanirvan, Sindhu Sudhakar Room Ani Itra and Gaily Equus Varsha among many others. Saili won a Meta for playing Mitra in A Friend's Story in 2016. She is a visiting faculty at Lalit Kala Academy and works closely with children. A trained actor and dancer, Abhay Mahajan has been a part of the alternative theatre and film movement in India for the past many years. Mahajan learned body movement for a year at the Attakalari Institute of Movement Arts and also conducts body movement workshops. His nomination as Best Actor in a Lead Role Male for A Friend's Story was his second Meta nomination as Best Actor after Shillak 2013. Sanjoy K. Roy is the Managing Director of Teamwork Arts. This conversation will be followed by a Q&A, so please feel free to send in your questions. Do follow our social media handles to be notified of the upcoming session screenings and full schedule. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting Vijay Tendulkar's A Friend's Story. Drama reflects the truth of our times. Sanjoy, over to you.
Suraj, thank you so much and welcome to this year's first edition of the Meta series. Delighted to have with us Akash Khurana, Gauri Ram Narayan, Abhay Mahajan, Saili Phatak to talk about what certainly was one of my most sort of loved plays in these last 15 years, A Friend's Story, which we also took across to the United States as part of our part to the United Kingdom as part of India at 70, where it performed at the Shakespeare Globe Theatre. I'm going to start by asking Akash, why A Friend's Story? And what is it that you felt resonated with you in this particular script?
Okay, so to say that I'm a fan of Vijay Tendulkar would be an understatement. I mean, I'm just so ardently in love with the man's work. And I had watched most of them except a lesser performed play called Mitra Chikosht, which is the Marathi original of a French story. And I thought let's see what it's all about. And I read it in Marathi, and I also read up the fact that when it was performed in 1981 by a stellar cast which included Vinay Apte, Rohini Hatangadi, and Ujjwala Jog, it was received with some discomfort and disdain, and it didn't do too many shows. And then the second thought that came to my mind was that it has a theme that is extremely relevant, apart from the fact that the way it's been written and the narrative structure, the drama in it was so beautiful. And, uh, and I thought it was worth a revisit. And when we got the opportunity, we said, let's do it. And the wonderful thing here is that the theme is really, which I personally, I mean, that's a line that I use often, that it's an eternal love story. It's a triangle, which involves three people. And the orientation is really not the main issue. It's how human beings relate to each other in a situation. And that's how we played it. And the fact that we went for that subtlety was the right decision because it's not in your face, and yet it underlines the theme very beautifully. And I must add here that I went to Pune to do the casting. I actually went to people who had belonged to the university and the campus world. And they had a sensibility. Our recce was like almost like a film recce, where we went across to the streets, to the campuses, to the monuments, and said that this is how pre-independence Pune in the 40s would have looked like. And the truth is that Mitra actually figured in Mr. Tendulkar's life. It's a real character. It's not a work of fiction. And that's why it's again a feather in Mr. Tendulkar's cap, because all his plays have to do with dramatic narration of truth. And the other fact is that my personal favorite, apart from, I mean, my actually the objective favorite is Ghanshiram Kotwal.
Yeah.
I could personally never dream of doing. My personal favorite, which I acted in 2 productions of, including one which I directed, was Ashi Pakre Yeti, which is a rare product in the oeuvre of Tendulkar because it's a romance. It has its ideological points of view, but it's such a beautiful romance. And within it, there is a political thought, there is also women's liberation. And because that romance is close to me, I thought this is the only other romance, a French story, that Tendulkar has written, and I must do it. So that is really it.
I want to come back to you about the treatment, the way you treated it and kept it so normal. But I'll come back to you. Gauri, Akash talked about the dramatic narrative of truth, which is Vijay Tendulkar's sort of in many ways hallmark. You yourself have translated 2 of Vijay Tendulkar's plays, and as you said earlier today, this wasn't necessarily your most favorite. Tell us, how did you approach the translation? Because, I mean, 2 questions in one. One is, how did you approach the translation? And the second thing, which I've always intrigued about in any translation, especially across the Indian languages and dialects, how do you, in translation, capture nuance, capture the essence of it? I mean, for example, Naka in Bengali, how does that translate into, say, a Hindi or an English? Or a pet jhede paikhana koro, which is, you have to dust your stomach out and how do you actually, translate? So give us in an essence, one is, what did you find in the play? As you said, it wasn't your favorite play. Why wasn't it? And then how do you capture nuance?
Okay. I don't know if I've done that. Thank you if you feel that the nuances have been captured in translation, because, I wasn't a translator then. That was the second thing that I translated, the first one being Kanyadan, which is also Vijayji's work. Actually, as you know, I was a very busy journalist. And Vijayji and I became very good friends for some reason. And I wanted to, he told me that he wrote a play called Mera Dard Na Jaane Koi, which was a radio play. And it was about Kumar Gandharv. Because Kumar Gandharv lost his voice. Imagine the tragedy of a great musician losing his voice, So he wrote about it, and Mera Dard Na Jaane Koi. And since I'm in the world of music, I was really interested. I said, can you give me a copy? I would like to see it. Is there a Hindi translation? Because I really don't know Marathi. I can't, I don't know Marathi to save myself. So he said that the play is not there, let alone the translation. I don't have it, but I'll tell you the story. So he told me the story, and I said, I wish you had it. I would love to translate it in Tamil. Because, I know I live in a world of musicians, and it would be so interesting. He said, why don't you do Kanyadan? I wasn't prepared for that. I mean, this was a kind of a self-indulgence, I wasn't thinking of publishing or anything. So then Kanyadan happened, but let's cut to the chase. Then it was, once I finished that, I thought, okay, this was the end of this translation business. And then he said, why don't you do Mitrachi Goshta? This is a play which is a complete flop. We had only 2 or 3 shows. Maybe it'll be interesting for you to translate a flop instead of that was typical Tendulkar, Akashji will know, it's a typical Tendulkar. So I said, okay, give me the play, let's take a look at it. And then I saw the play and I didn't care for it. But somehow he persuaded me to translate it. He said that it would be part of my education in translation and in understanding human relationships, whatever. So finally, I did translate it, but I translated it from Vasant Dev's translation in Hindi. And then I sat with Vijayji and we went through the translation. Now, try doing it with a living playwright. And Vijayji is so particular, even about those asides and comments and, playwrights. He's such a painful person to work with, So finally, we did something, and then I got it done. And, the reason I don't want to translate it, as I told you, there is neither fame, nor money, nor name, nothing in it. I'm surprised that you called me a translator to be part of this discussion. So, and also the reason why I didn't like the play, let me explain that, was that, there's a German word which I can't really spell or pronounce, but perfectly expresses my feeling about this play. It's this Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude, where you see another person's misery and you relish that, So, I thought this, I didn't mind it in some of his other plays, but I really didn't feel that the artistic element was strong enough to overcome the Schadenfreude part of it. So that was the problem with the play. Second part would be how did I do it? Tendulkar's plays are difficult not only because, and one more very important thing that I think our the listeners would also be interested in knowing is that when I took my translation, we found out that Vasant Dev's translation was extremely sentimental, and which is completely different from Vijayji's spare, harsh, masculine kind of writing, and, no nonsense, unsentimental kind of writing. I remember there's something about Dukh ki khai mein gir gayi or something like that. You can't imagine Tendulkar saying, I fell into the valley of desolation or misery or anything. Yeah, So there was a lot of work to be done there. So that was the major problem. Then the second thing was, and he had not read the Hindi translation. So then when we came to the actual play, the problem was not so much translating the text as it was. The problem was how to get Tendulkar's pauses, his not saying anything and saying so much, and to get those unsaid things into the translation. I don't know if I've succeeded, but the other problem, of course, is you can do it brilliantly, I think, in another Indian language. to do it in English, English is intractable when it comes to Indian languages. It's extremely difficult to get the spirit of an Indian language into that. So that was the challenge, to get the pauses and the unsaid through the words. And I'm not Vijay Tendulkar. I hadn't even written a play in those days. So to get that was the greatest challenge, I can tell you that. And also the characters are not intellectual geniuses, or, they're not even highly educated. So the kind of language they use, Kanyadan was much easier because, you can use language. I'm a wordsmith, you can use language. But here, you have to break language, break it down and say the minimal and then get the maximal out of it. That was what was difficult. And what I finally did was, if anybody did produce this flop play, now he has made us a success, Akashji. So a great success. If anybody produces it, then it's the director's business, the actor's business, the lighting person's business to get all those meanings out of it. So that's how it happened.
Actually, this is.
I'm going to come to. I'm going to come back to Abhay and Sally when you talk about the whole, the characters. But Akash, I'm going to come back to you for a second. Gauri talked about the unstated. She talked about paring down Vijay Tendulkar's language because he really believed in the simplicity. And one of the things, certainly for me, when I saw it, was the fact that it wasn't over dramatic. And as Gauri said, that she had to tone down the more emotive translation that had already been done in Hindi. And it's quite over the top, meaning it's a very different, a very different sort of sentiment in that play than it is in your play. But let me ask you, when you were workshopping it, because I do know that you took a very long time to be able to make this play, because it's a very difficult play. And it was, in many ways, what Gauri said, the unsaid, the unstated, the sitting on the bench in the beginning, the sitting on the top of the bench, coming down, sitting at the bottom, and talking about my best friend. And even while talking about my best friend, when Abhay talks about it, the best friend is not there, and you realize, and it then builds. So tell us a little bit about the process that you followed, Akash. And the second part, because I'm always conscious about time and I want to move on to Abhay and Sally. Given today's context, today we're in 2021, Vijay Tendulkar wrote this 45 years ago. It's a difficult play in any context outside of the romance. You and I and Gauri and Sally and Abhay may think of it as a romantic play, which it is. And therefore, the success of it is because you have shown it as normal. You haven't shown it as this is about 377, etc. But the question I'm asking you is, in today's context of 377, how do you see this playing out as a story? And I will come very briefly to what happened with Jati Hi Pucho Sadhu Ki, which was stopped. They didn't allow it to be performed, or they didn't provide protection for it to be performed in Chhatarpur, Madhya Pradesh recently, when a particular right-wing group didn't allow for its performance because they questioned, how can anyone question the Jat of a Sadhu? Akash.
So quickly, multiple points here. So Gauri inadvertently did me a big favor by actually putting in the music of it, the rests vis-a-vis the crescendos and the unstated. Now I got lucky, or maybe not, because it was a conscious decision to pursue the likes of Saili, Abhay, Parna and the others, that I got actors like this. I mean, I in fact want to challenge anybody in the theatre, if without these three people, they could come on par with our production. They are so good. And I've worked with a lot. And the workshopping was really about going into that person's territory, the actor's territory, and not wanting them to become a character. The three empathized and identified, and hence gave us the triangle, because the lines were lines and there was an economy, and that was a whatever part of the dramaturgy or whatever. But these three actors understood the thought, and that's how. So And to be fair to everybody concerned, it's a play that really works better on stage than on the because you need these collaborative inputs. Coming to the second one, I think you said it yourself that I treated it normally. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the intent is that people of all kinds, to talk about diversity and inclusivity, are normal. This is normal. So, in that sense, by the corollary or it extrapolates to the fact that whatever people are wanting in the world is to accept normalcy or accept it as normal, human behavior. And I mean, why would we get felicitated at 50 years of UK celebrating the decriminalization of homosexuality in England? So that's my ideology. I mean, everyone is equal. And the third part is that I think a play like this would not invite now, at least, the protest. Because remember, again, because it's a romance, this is one of the plays where really there was no agitation or protest. There was just discomfort and disdain. People felt revolted, or people felt this is so unreal and funny. And I'm not taking away from the actors who played then. Maybe they could perhaps deliver a French story the way I have. But those were different times. And now the times are different. I think, to be fair to society at large, it's an evolved society, at least the theater going audiences. And I think the protest groups will, I mean, it's a no-brainer. There's nothing here for protest as such.
Eileen, let me throw you into the deep end. In many ways, the character that you played was, for the lack of a better word, chulbuli, full of life, full of effervescent, etc. And as Akash said, in many ways, he thought he found that in you. What is it about characters like this, whether it's the character you played, or Bobby Padamsee, who took his own life when he realized that he could never lead what his parents wanted to be as normal life, because he was gay and he had a sailor as his boyfriend. Why is it that characters like this aren't able to then continue their world in a way that's less than that whole 9 yards? And what is it that makes them underneath this chulbuliness so dark, so desperate, so unfulfilled, unwanted, and they take their lives?
I think when I read Mitrachi Goshta, the Marathi script, for me, when I read all of it, I was extremely, I mean, I remember crying when I was reading, and I told Akash sir, that's how I felt. And I found all the characters to be so layered. And, many a times you're labeled that, oh, she's a bubbly, friendly person, or, she's a very serious type. And that was the first thing that struck me, that this is extremely layered. She might appear to be someone, but she is actually not just that. And I think that's the case with all of us. We have an image that we walk with in the society, and we want people to look at us a certain way. But that's not entirely who we are. And I think there's a problem, or I wouldn't want to call it a problem, but I think what makes it difficult for that person is when their image of whatever they've built, or whatever they want the society to think of them as, and what they really actually identify with, if that gap is sufficiently large, is when the whole turmoil starts. And I think most of us struggle to try and bridge that gap between what we want others to think of us and what we really, really are, and what we want to actually be. And I think for me, this is life. I think I battle this every day. So when I see it, I see another person going through something like that, and I can see that this is not just what is shown, or this is not about what Bapu thinks. There's something to Mitra which she is struggling with. I immediately relate to her. And I think no matter what your orientation is or where you're coming from, I think this is the thing that connects people to characters and other people also. This is my way of connecting to other people. When I see that there's something going on here, it immediately interests me. I want to talk to that person. I want to communicate. So I think we all have that side to us. There's a dark side and there's this side to us that is like, I'm smiling and I'm talking. And yeah, like I said, the gap is where that pretty much determines the kind of life you're going to live.
Gauri, I'm going to come back to you with, is love and struggle overrated as what we see in our life? But I'll come back to you on that. Abhay, Saili talks about the many layers in a character. Yet when you come to a play, the first time when you pick up a play, whatever it is, and start reading it, and you're in rehearsal right now, their words. How do you as an actor process that? How do you find these many layers that Sally talked about? How do you discover them? How do you uncover them? Is it an inward looking process? Is it a two-way or a three-way process, meaning a director tries to navigate you, your co-actors try to help you? Or is it that you have to look deep inside and then unpeel layer after layer till you reflect your own truth?
Yeah, there are all these things, I think. So first of all, I read the play in English, and then immediately I read the play in Marathi. And before we started the rehearsal, I had just finished doing Shantada Court Chalu Hai. So I was already in this whole zone of Tendulkar. And after I read the Marathi version, because we know Ferguson College, because we know Pune, there are very minute details which are experiential, which come to us in a very different way that I can understand that they might not come to someone else. That's why it was, I think later on we realized it was a great decision to cast actors from Pune. Not us, but of course us also. But and another thing, I feel like Akash sir himself is a tremendous actor. He knows as an actor not to, like, I think the form of the play is such that we don't delve into the emotions too much, because he himself, he's someone like, you taste the emotion and you go ahead. You don't dip into it. And that's how he asks us to play with the emotions and the characters. And of course, me, Saili, Parna, we all are really good friends. So we know each other's lives also very closely. So it is very easy for us to be vulnerable in front of each other. And because I think this play demanded a very, very delicate vulnerability. Like, because it's almost like every character comes on the stage and the play almost demands that character to be broken again and again and again. And I think you have to allow yourself to let that happen to you. Like sometimes we want to impose those things, but as we let those rehearsals, and of course there was this 10 shows run which we had in Bangalore, which I think changed the play completely, because it started hitting us in a very different way. And also now I think about that time, the whole conversation about gender was also very different. The accusation about gender and the conversation was way different than what it is right now. So we never looked at it as something like gay or lesbian. It was never in that space. It was all, of course, as Gauri said, it was about the middle class, naive person in a way. But that's how we always looked at it. It never became into something that, is it about sexuality in this way? It is about what to do with these feelings. I don't know what to do with the feelings and how do I deal with it. And somehow we kept it till that. Like if you would have done it today, it would have been different articulation. But it was a fantastic discovery because of all those things.
Akash, I think Abhay said something very, very appropriate for this play. Talked about, and you've talked about it also, about silence. And we know that silence in theater, or the unsaid or unstated, the silence in film, which of course you're able to edit, so you find the silences, but in theater you don't. It's capturing the moment. Today, if you look at news, for example, even behind the headlines, they'll cover it with, every kind of boom, 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 boom music. Or even the other day, I was watching, the dugout, cricket match, and at the back was this crazy, unbelievable rap music. Tell us, talk a little bit about silence and how you, and I think again, Abhay sort of touched upon that, talked about you as an actor and bringing to your role as the director, also the actor in you, the understanding of silence and nuance. Tell us about how you uncovered and discovered that in this very poignant production.
So in terms of craft, if one was to sort of go into the direction of, say, exploring the value of silence, silence is gold, is to actually internalize the fact that you should not be threatened by silence. You should not be insecure as an actor to handle silence. The moment you get the confidence to handle silence, you get actually an inbuilt facility to handle text, speech, because it's music. I mean, look at any sheet score, and you will, when you talk about either metronomes or beats or the value of a note, a huge significant portion is by rests.
Yes.
So what this boom boom that you speak about is really giving inputs to a listener, but not to the hearer. The musicality of drama, narration, behavior comes through a variation. The value of, so it's mutual. Silence enhances speech, speech enhances silence. But you've got to know how to treat both, because that comes from practice, instinct, sensibility, and an inner nature. Are you comfortable? So, I mean, if I were to do this exercise that I do Friend Story in the same 80 minutes, I act as narrator. I convert it into prose and say that the body language of my three main sort of protagonists is going to be silence. I can bet you that the impact will be similar because actors of this caliber can handle silence. They will sit there, give their expressions, whether it's a smile or a hurt or a tear, and the narrator gives you the story. It will work because that's the dynamic. So it's not simple, and it shouldn't sound simplistic. It's extremely complex. But the key one thing is that you should not be afraid or intimidated by handling silence. That's the starter.
I'll come back to Sally in a second. Gauri, going back to my question, is romance or love and struggle sort of overrated when it comes to constructing a play or a story? And I'm going to also start taking questions from the audience as they've started pouring in. Parag Chaturvedi asks, this for all the wonderful panelists here, do you think a play translated, does it lose a part of its essence? So both questions, Gauri, to you.
Yes, it absolutely does. Because, in a sense, it becomes the translator's play. It's really not even though you are conveying the exact content, at least you're trying to approximate, it becomes a translator's play because it is a choice of words. And finally, a play is also words, right? So that is something that, however much you may search for the unsaid, you have to say the unsaid through words and silences, like he said. So I think that way, and then the nuances of the language in the original, that of course you lose. And so it becomes all the more difficult, I think, for the director and for the actors to restore those things which have been lost in translation. This is my opinion.
But I also think in that, like when it comes to actors also become the authors in a way.
Yes.
Because the actors bring so much of their own life into it. So I feel the authorship also changes. You lose something, but it also adds a lot of thing to it. And there is loss, but of course, that loss is always been filled up by something new, I think.
Absolutely. I agree.
Gauri, going back to my earlier question, is love and struggle overrated in a construct of a play or a story?
I think today we don't have so many love stories as such. I think people are exploring there is love, of course, you can't deny that. but I think people are exploring other kinds of relationships. And even when it comes to love, they're trying to look at other kinds of love, as in this play, for instance, and or between a child and a friend, or between two strangers who meet somewhere and then develop a relationship. So I think already people do feel that love, I don't know if they consciously feel that love is overrated, but struggle, you cannot get rid of it. Because human life is a struggle. Every moment is a struggle. Whether you're born in a very privileged community and a privileged family, or you're really living on the streets. Struggle is part of everyday life, human existence. I think to struggle is to be human. So I think you can say that, like you said, to think is to be human. So you can say to struggle is to be human. And also, I think struggle teaches us something very important. We were talking about this yesterday in another conference about dissent, because I think struggle makes you indulge. Struggle makes you strong enough to dissent. I think that gives you that strength. If you don't struggle, I think your personality does not develop that kind of confidence and strength and that fearlessness, So I think that struggle is very, very important. Whether it's in writing a play, in translating, it's such a huge struggle. So, it is not exactly answering your question, but something.
No, it does. It does. And I think, taking from that, Sally, as Gauri said, struggle, it really makes you as a person.
Yes.
Kamya asks, is it true that with each play, there's something that you take with you for life, and there's something that you leave behind? Can you tell us what did you learn and what did you leave behind? And to that, I want to ask a question about the very nature of friendship. Abhay talked about how you all hang together and you all know each other very well. Did that sense of friendship come through, and did it help you in the construct of this play? Is it important as actors?
Right. So the first thing, what did I take and what did I leave behind? This is one of the most important plays I've ever done in my life. And I think it came at a point when I think I needed it, not just as an actor, but as a human being. And for me, what I learned, and I think something that I now live by, is that I started finding my own language and my own understanding of things. Until then, I had probably always lived my life based on what was told to me. Friendship means this, success means this, so and so. And I realized that no, I can have my own definitions. I can define my own life. I can say this is what friendship is. I can say this is what love means to me. This is what I want to. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I definitely took away from this story, this play, the process, the team that we had. And connecting it to the second question, it made a lot of difference that Abhay, Parna were a part of this play, because we knew each other. We had done a lot of other work together. And then we came to this, and also the time when that point of time in our lives was where we were actually questioning things. We were transitioning. We'd come out of college. We were wondering what sort of a career do we want? What kind of an actor do I want to be? Abhay had the same questions, and we were all struggling with these thoughts. And to be in this vulnerable space and to kind of live the story of friendship and love, where all the characters are also questioning all of this, was extremely important to us. And I think that is what also took us to the next level of our existence in that sense, because we realized that okay, we are three friends, but we also have our own language and own understanding of things, and sort of also being able to let go of what we had then carried with us till then, and just being able to look at each other as individuals was something that happened to the three of us. And I can say that now. Maybe back then I did not, I wouldn't be able to articulate it this way, but now in retrospect I can see that this is what happened. And I think a part of us, I mean, we are not the same people anymore, and I think that's that's that. I mean, we left like a part of us with that play and that process there, and we are where we are now. So yeah.
That's very interesting. She talks about, Sally talks about looking at each person as an individual. Vijay Tendulkar's plays are about that, are about
Yeah.
individuals. And it's about the simplicity of the truth of the individual. And much of his play is really simple. Even the most recent one that was done in Pune, it was, one room, a couple of characters going about their everyday lives, no drama. But within that, it was the drama of the character. What is it that makes you choose a Vijay Tendulkar play? It's not necessarily anymore an obvious choice, given everything that you have around here, the extra amount of hysteria that you tend to see on OTT platforms, and of course in theatrical spaces, because it is theater. What drew you to Tendulkar? And in that question, if you can also sort of just tell us without giving away, without making it a spoiler, death is so difficult to depict. And in this case, you depicted it with so much of finesse by not depicting it in many ways. Tell us a little bit about that. And to that, I'm going to ask you one more question, which has come from Vandana Mathur, who asks, I would like to know how young directors who really come from the hinterland can really fit into the critics circle, make their way in the theater world. And I'll also add to that once you give us some of this. Akash.
So there's a reason classics are called classics. In fact, the mandate when I chose this play was to do a classic by an Indian author. And the choices that cropped up were Kalidas's plays, and then downward to the obvious, the usual suspects. And I, because I'm a Tendulkar fan, that's not to take away from the other the oft-quoted names in the firmament of Indian theatre, the obvious. They're all brilliant, and I've worked with all of them, and I know all, or knew all of them. And I chose this for the reasons I said. So a classic becomes a classic because of the perpetuity of its universal truths. And that is why Tendulkar works even today, because he will touch a nerve somewhere, a sensibility somewhere. And it could be a niche. I mean, a play like this might not be everyone's cup of tea, extreme violence. But for me, every single play of his is a gem, including a one actor called Kair, which is the coward. I mean, and the reason Tendulkar writes that way, because he writes about real people. And you can't mess with that. You can't imagine a fictionalized, I mean, this is real. He's been there, seen that, done that, and it works. And the magic, of course, is just such brilliant. I mean, I don't know. It's a once in a lifetime kind of talent. So that's it. I mean, I would still choose it because it works for me. Well, the context doesn't matter. If you can do Shakespeare today, you can do Tendulkar today. I mean, talk about relevance and whatever. A good story is a good story.
The second part of the question from outside was, for a person from the hinterland, for a director from the hinterland, how do they make an advent, etc. And remember, the third was about the death, about the suicide.
So the hinterland question, I think it's a narrow view. In Mumbai itself, you will find actors, directors from the hinterland doing work. So obviously, there are now avenues, and they have been for a while. But earlier it used to be routed through the NSD and so forth. But a lot of people from various backgrounds are doing work here. So I think today, more than ever before, and you'll be surprised, when I started 40 years ago, there weren't so many audiences. And today, with the kind of alternate spaces and the kind of independent thought and almost a gremlins-like mushrooming of of talent, young talent wanting to do work irrespective, and not just as a via media to step into films or television or whatever. That's a natural order. The fact of the matter is that there is a path which someone has defined earlier. People are following it. I think just look for that path. It's there. That's all I can say. I don't think there's a barrier to advent of such sort of kind of demographics, as it were, to make it, or and as a flip, I would also say that you do good work wherever you are, and somewhere it'll emanate into the bigger things, or more global or universal or pan-Indian sort of. So I think that definition needs a bit of redefinition.
And a comment on the death,
Okay.
depicting.
I I think it could be a spoiler, so I don't want to say that. But I do believe in motifs and the circle of life. And without going into karma and 84,000 sort of rebirths, I want to say that how can a death be a celebration? Is the question I ask myself. Because I believe in you, and I wish for people to live on with that view rather than just lose out in defeat. And clearly, if it's a celebration, how do I, in terms of stagecraft and narration, create a magic moment where it becomes not a final moment, but a perpetual spiritual moment? I want to keep it this vague.
Gauri, a perpetual spiritual moment when you were translating, because you start,
Yeah.
the play starts from the end and then tells itself right through. So in many ways, you actually have set the scene. How difficult it is, and what was there in the original that you took? And Deepika Deshpande, the actor, asked of you, which language did you translate Kanyadan from? And I think Deepika acted in Kanyadan.
Hindi,
Hindi.
from Hindi. Since we're talking about language, I don't know if I can answer that question because this is so long ago, and like I said, I did not do it with any kind of professional interest or anything. I just did it because Vijayji was a friend and he asked me to do it. So I don't want to give it some highfalutin reason now, but the thing is, one of the things that he said to me, I still remember and cherish, and I think it'll be very good for actors to know that, and for other playwrights, it was so simple. I'd done this play Dark Horse. You've seen it, Sanjay. And
Yep.
So he came to see it, and he said some nice things about it. Nice things are not important. After that, he wrote to me and he said, I think you'll be writing other plays. And when you do, try using the half said, the unsaid, and saying for saying's sake, and not saying for not saying's sake.
Wow.
Such an amusing thing, I just started laughing when I read it. But I understood exactly what he meant because, what happens is the actors too, and all of us, playwrights, even directors, we tend to we tend to think of the word as a kind of a crutch, So that, like he said, Akash said so brilliantly, if you are comfortable with silence, that's when you're a good actor. Of course, this doesn't work for journalists. Journalists, my mantra is to be crystal clear and lucid. This won't work for me, my profession.
Sorry, these are journalists. You have to be crystal clear and have pounding music in the back in case. Just to sort of, whatever, Taja Khabar, Kanuni, whatever, Puri Khabar.
I'm a journalist, so one of those dodos, antediluvian time dodos. Okay, but so that I really remember that, and what interested me in this play, I think if that was the question, honest, I've gone somewhere else, is that it's the incoherence of the people's minds, their inability to express. That, I think, is what captured my attention in this play. That's what kept me going and challenged me really to do it. Because, none of them, Babu, Babya, or Mitra, or Nama, Pandey, they are not able to say what they want to say. I think that is the eternal human condition. Even if you think you're a wordsmith, and even if you're, you're a Demosthenes, I think there are times when you are stuck, you're not able to express the inmost things that you want to say. And the struggle to say that, the struggle to reveal yourself, the struggle to communicate, the struggle to bond, I think that's what comes out in this play for me. And as a translator, that was the biggest challenge. And I did it from Hindi.
I mean, if you start to play, just that struggle to not being able to say it, but you're having to say it, and the pauses, etc., was so poignant, so evocative, and really drags the audience into your space.
Yes.
It was really long. Tell us a little bit about the process, but we really have to be really quick because I need.
No, I think we were talking about simplicity with this play, but I think this simplicity is very illusional. That and that's what even when Akash sir used to direct, he used to make it sound very simple, but you could sense there is something which is behind that. It nags you. Why is it so simple? No, it cannot be that simple. And I think it is all about because in a way, I don't know whether I should spoil it or not, but he knows what has happened to their relationship. And he's talking about something which has happened in the past. So how do we look at the past? And every show, it used to be a struggle. Okay, how am I going to look at this story today? Yeah. And it was never, because it's like always opening the same book every day and saying that, let's say, but it doesn't give you the same meaning. And that's why it was quite something, I think. So that opening monologue.
Beautifully said. Kashish asks of you, Abhay, would you retrace any of your steps back in your theatre journey? And how is theatre progressing in college circuits? Any advice for a college society? Quickly.
I think all the people who say that, everyone who's saying that, do something else, do theatre sometime, it's a stepping stone to go to film or something. I think it is great to be just doing theatre right now. That's the only thing I will say, because a lot of people think of theatre as a stepping stone towards something. And if you think about it like that, then it's going to give you only that. There's much more.
So Abhay talked about keeping the interpretation fresh. How am I going to tell the story today? Tell us your technique. How do you day after day do the same play, say the same lines, but bring a freshness?
Yes.
And to that, Akansha asks you, what kind of impact does a character have on an actor's life? And how does the character you played in a Friend story impacted your life? Quickly.
I think as an actor, I don't think about how I'm going to add something more to the show each time. I think it's best to be in that moment. A lot what happens before the show is also somewhere, I think, influences or it determines your performance for that day. And I let that happen to me. And I think I've started enjoying that, because I think that's how the freshness or the newness comes into each performance. You don't have, this has never worked for me. Some actors do that. And I know some people who think about what I'm going to add today. I might do this differently, but I never thought about it. I just used to let go and see what happens. So that's what happened. And if that added anything new each time, that's great. How did this character, it's left its mark on me, definitely. I think what I said earlier is what happened. I found, Mitra just allowed me to be myself. She in a way taught me that I can just be, I can just take a break and stop thinking about what the world wants from me. And I think each character kind of leaves you with something. And I think it changes over time. Like you start making sense of it in a larger sense. At that point of time, you're looking at the most immediate things the play has given you or the character's given you. Okay. But in the longer run, you see bigger things. And
I would like to just add one thing about this. Like, I think doing any part is like having a relationship. It never leaves you. It never leaves you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Akash Akila from Just Us Repertory asks, for some constituencies such as the LGBTQIA communities, dissent isn't a choice. Neither is struggle. What is the responsibility of theatre makers in this regard? How does this production navigate this responsibility?
It doesn't preach anything. It lets you discover and empathize on your own. That's all I can say. I mean, there are no theories here.
Wonderful.
It's good to postulate. Yeah, I mean, there are ways I can. But coming from the position I personally am in, it's a play. Whatever one feels and whoever watches it takes back. I mean, it depends on the quality, it depends on that particular day of the show. It talks about each actor's deliverance of a message. The director is just that he presents something to you, and communication, including theatre, is a two-way process. There is the audience's participation. The participation is take what you want to out of it. Distillation.
Well, Rashomon, for example, 6 or 7 different versions. You can go away with as many truths as you want to. The truths sit with each other. It's no one truth is greater than the other. As we are being told today, there's only my way or the highway. Alka Khanna asks of Gauri, which writer do you consider the Tendulkar of today? And to that, I'm going to ask you a closing question. Theatre is about questioning. Plays are about questioning status quo, all kinds of things. How important is that? And in the questioning, do we lose reason or do we use reason?
Sanjay, you ask such difficult questions. Okay? This is really tough, okay? The thing is, this requires a PhD thesis. But anyway, I don't think there is any Tendulkar of today, because there is no Satish Alekar of today, there is no Mahesh Elkunchwar of today, there's no Mohan Rakesh of today. These playwrights and actors are doing what they can in their time. They're engaging with their time. And those who do it well, I really enjoy watching them with all their flaws, all their struggles, all their, because, I don't want to compare anyone with anybody who went before, any more than saying this person is a Shakespeare of some, of England today, that kind of thing, About the can you simplify it for me?
Every play or most books,
questions.
You ask the question.
Yeah.
And how does that play out? And how important is the aspect of question?
Yeah. Every word you write, I think if you are a serious writer, whether it's a play or anything else, it's a question mark. You're not giving answers, unless you're a politician, and then you're masquerading as someone who gives answers. You're not really giving answers. So how it plays out, I think Akash has already answered that question in his way, that I don't see it as the responsibility of the artist to change society or set out with the idea of giving some message to society or improving society. You're reacting to your times. I'm sure I speak for myself, but I'm sure I speak for all serious artists. I think this is the only medium, theatre, not the classical arts. This is the only, and not the film world, because there, the commercial considerations are too great. Here, only theatre we have where we can express dissent, where we can rebel, where we can protest, and it doesn't cost as much. So anybody can do it, in any way, at any level. You don't have to do it at the Globe. You can do it on the street, So I think commitment is what is important. And it is, you raise questions, it is society's responsibility, right? I mean, it is every individual's responsibility. I take responsibility for the world in which I live. So everybody must take responsibility. Say my play is rubbish. Say I've got it all wrong and this is right. I'm happy with that kind of dissent. But then don't be indifferent to what is happening. I think to do theatre today, by questioning, by rebelling, by protesting, I think every one of us is not just raising questions, it's raising awareness. So to ask more questions. So I ask a question, you ask another question, we'll create a symphony of questions. Maybe one day there will be an answer.
Beautifully said. I'm having to close today with that answer. Really, theater is not didactic. As Gauri said, it's not a political speech from a stage, which is one way. It is a dialogue, it's a discussion, it's an interaction. Most importantly, it's an exchange of energy between the actors and the audience, and of course, between the universe. And as Gauri again said, it's really about reflecting today's reality. I'm so sorry I haven't been able to take all the questions that you all have posed to us. Vandana, to your question, how does theatre get on with OTT? What about the new rules, etc.? We are going to have a discussion on that at the end of the festival series. So do log on. Thank you all for watching. I do hope you're going to watch tomorrow's Friend Story. And I may be biased. It's been one of my most favorite plays, even though Gauri didn't enjoy translating it over the past 15 years. That's the reason we've selected it in this special series to bring back theatre, bring theatre to life, not necessarily physically, as we know what the situation is, but we promise we will be back again next year physically. Till then, Akash Khurana, Gauri Ramnarayan, Abhay Mahajan, Sally Pathak, and from all of my colleagues at Mahindra at Teamwork, thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to having you on tomorrow. And of course, every week for the next 5 weeks, we have a conversation on Friday and the play on a Saturday. Till then, stay masked and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Akash, Gauri, Sayali, and Abhay for such an incredible session. And thank you, Sanjoy, for being a fabulous moderator, as always. Once again, we'd like to thank Mahindras for their unstinted support for arts. And thank you all for watching and being a great audience. Hope this session sparked your curiosity to watch the play tomorrow. If you like this conversation, please comment, share, and spread the word. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the notifications of the upcoming plays and live conversations. All these conversations will be available to view on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Please do log back at 7 p.m. IST tomorrow for the screening of A Friend Story directed by Akash Khurana. Thank you once again and see you all tomorrow.